Hi, George here, and today I wanted to talk about how to resize images inside of Photoshop Elements. It's fairly easy, but it can be confusing if you're not familiar with the process. If you want to have written instructions for this, I do have this inside of my HDG Photo Coach. Let me show you that real fast. There we go. If you're in the Photo Coach, there's a section on Resize right here. It's in the Menus section, and scroll down in Menus, and you'll find it down here in the R's, Resize right there. And quite a bit of information in here, a lot of specifics on using Resize. Now, if you don't have the Photo Coach, I'll put a link for this at the top of the description. Okay, start off with a basic picture. I'm going to close both of these down. Let's just get these out of the way. And I'll open up a brand new image. So File and Recent, and I have my original shot right here. There we go. The first thing you need to do is to look at your file format type. This is a JPEG, JPG right here, which means that this is a compressed file type. If I make any changes to this, it's going to recompress that file type again, and we can lose detail or resolution. To prevent that, what you should do before you do anything else, save this out as a PSD file, Photoshop Elements file, so that any changes that are made aren't going to affect the resolution. Let's go up here to File and Save As. And I'll just put this into my Working Files folder. And I want to save this as a Photoshop file right here. This is your standard Photoshop Elements file format. And choose Save. And you should see that change right up here. It now says PSD. It's never safe on changing our sizes in here without it going back and recompressing for the JPEG format. Okay, let's go up here to Image. And you'll find Resize right here. And we'll be using Image Size. And this is your main dialog box for resizing your image to different sizes. And let's talk through here. There are two sections, the pixel dimensions up here and the document size. Now these are separate but tied together. The pixel dimensions is the actual pixels of the image on your screen. Document size is your printed size for this. If I change this from percent to inches, this would print out at 26 by 17. So pretty good size printout. If I was printing this out, I could set this to fit paper and it would then fit a standard printing paper, but it would still retain all this document size. Now the pixel dimensions up here, if I change my resolution down here, let's say I wanted to actually take this out to printing, so I wanted to have more resolution. I usually recommend going for 300 pixels per inch. So let's change this to 300. Notice how these numbers stayed the same, these sizes stayed the same, but my pixel dimensions went up a lot because I basically made this 4 times larger pixel-wise because the resolution has gone up. You see that right up here. Also, the file size got a lot larger. It's now 122.1 as opposed to the previous 7. So much larger pixel dimensions when you increase your resolution. So keep that in mind if you're having issues with disk space. Now, when I change this resolution here to 300, it's not going to be giving me any more detail. It can't actually give me detail that doesn't exist. So it's going to interpolate that. Basically, if I had 2 pixels in here, a black pixel and a white pixel, and they were side by side at 72, and I then made it at 300 pixels per inch, it would then move those apart and give me 3 more pixels in between, and it would just give me a gradient for those pixels. And that is right down here. It says Resample Image. You can choose to not resample if you want to, but notice that the sizes drop back to their original settings. So I'll set this to Resample. And on resampling, you have several options. Bicubic Smoother, Bicubic Sharper, Bicubic Best for Smooth Gradients, and Nearest Neighbor, and then Bilinear. Bicubic works better than Bilinear. This is an older style. And usually, where it says over here, Best for Enlargement, or Best for Reduction, or Best for Smooth Gradients, these are very good recommendations. So if you're going for a larger size, go Best for Enlargement. If you're going for a smaller size, go Best for Reduction. The only time you don't want to do this is if you have something with a lot of hard edges, like a logo or something. In that case, what you want to do is to preserve your hard edges, and that's where you would use Nearest Neighbor. Now, you should check that it's not going to automatically choose the right one for you in here, so you have to decide what are you doing. I'm making this larger, I'm increasing my resolution, so I have 2 options in here, Best for Enlargement or Best for Smooth Gradients. Now on this one, I have smooth gradients in here in the flesh tones, so that would be an option, but I also have sharper edges in here around the eyes, edges of the lips, things like that, edges of the nose, the hair. So I would probably choose Best for Enlargement, which should retain some of those hard edges better than the Best for Smooth Gradients. Okay, going back up to the top up here, here's our pixels. And notice this little link right here. It links these 2 together. Same thing right down here. Here's a link over here. That is constrained proportions right there. What this means is if I change one number here, say I wanted to make this a height of 2000 pixels, then the width also changes to match that. Same thing right down here. Both sizes adjust based upon the one dimension. That's your constrained proportions. And this keeps everything looking correct. If I uncheck that and I change one and not the other, it's either going to squish or stretch the image, and it's going to look very, very odd. You may want to do that on some images for a special effect, but in most cases, you want to make sure that constraint proportions is selected. Notice as I uncheck this, Scale Styles goes grayed out. That's because Scale Styles goes with constraint proportions, and this works if you have any layer styles on your image. It will adjust the layer styles, for instance, the thickness of an outline, things like that, the distance of a drop shadow. This will adjust the distances so it still looks the same as it's changing sizes. If you uncheck this, the thickness of outlines, position of drop shadows, things like that will change if you're changing the size of your image. So I recommend to stick with constraint proportions and scale styles. These are all the defaults, by the way, so most of the time you can ignore this stuff right down here. Okay, let's say I wanted to change this here to something more standard. I wanted to make this at a good 8x10 image at a resolution of 300. I recommend changing your resolution first. This seems to work better that way. And then make sure that you have the constraint proportions on here. Since I want 8x10, I'll go for the larger number here and then make this 10. And we'll see what happens. That brings the height in at 6.667 to 10 inches wide. And that's because it's a little wider than it is tall on the image. So this is the best choice for printing it out at 8x10 for this particular image. When you're happy with everything, just go ahead, hit the OK button. It's going to make all those adjustments. There we go. We did an enlargement, so the image got larger. Our zoom rate here stayed the same, so we just zoomed in on the picture basically. You can zoom back out again. Picture still looks the same. Go back up here to Image, Resize, and Image Size. It's now saying %. I'll change this to inches. And here we go. It's now at our 10x6. This, by the way, is another reason why you want to save your image out as a Photoshop file or change the name of the file before you make these kind of adjustments, just in case anything goes wrong. You'll still have your original untouched. So we're really working on a copy this way. If you want to change the ratio of your picture in here, that's a whole different thing. Let's now crop this to a regular 8x10. And the best way to do that is with the crop tool right over here, where it says modify. And let's set this at 8x10. There we go. Here's our 8x10 ratio. I can then pull my control handle here until I get the exact height. So there's my full height. And then position this so I have a nice 8x10 in here. And I think maybe in just a little bit. There we go, like that. Hit the check mark. And we've now cropped this down to an exact 8x10 ratio. Now, because I cropped this down, it will have changed our dimensions a little bit. Let's go back up here to Image, Resize, Image Size. Let's set this at inches. And it's pretty darn close. Width of 10 and height of 7.999. I think that's good enough to consider that as being an 8x10. It did change our resolution slightly though here, but not enough for me to be concerned with that. This should still print out just fine. Again, if you want written information about this, you'll find it in my HTG Photo Coach, and I have a link there at the top of the description. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that thumbs up. Also, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any videos in the future, and I'll see you next time.